Right now it's 9. Joining me now to talk about the continuing drama in the Mediterranean are two people who have relatives among the hostage passengers aboard the hijacked ship, the Achille Lauro. Carol Hodis is the daughter of passenger Millie Hodis, who is on board the ship. Her father, Frank, is safe, though. He got off the ship to do some sightseeing, and so he escaped being hijacked. And Carol is here with me in New York. Also joining us from WPLG TV in Miami is Phyllis Yellin. Her mother, Sophie Chasser, is still on board the ship. And thank you both for joining us. Phyllis, good morning.
Good morning.
Phyllis, the reports yesterday that two women hostages had been killed on board, to what extent what has this emotional roller coaster been like for you, back and forth with those reports?
When I heard most of the reports, I was sitting there figuring that, eventually the hostages would be released. But when I heard the report of two women being killed, it was like the whole world had just come apart. I think that was the most terrifying report that I've heard at all on this whole thing. I just kept hoping it was wrong.
So what did you think? I don't know if you heard earlier this morning, the PLO representative to the UN told David that he was very hopeful that this whole thing would be resolved within perhaps even hours. What is your reaction to that?
At this point, I don't know what to believe. Everything I hear has been conflicted by something else that I hear. Every report has a contrasting report. I'm at a point where all I'm doing is waiting and just hoping that it'll be over whenever it's over, and the sooner the better.
How did you hear? Did you hear from the State Department?
Not this morning. Last night they called me about 8 o'clock to tell me they didn't know anything, but they would keep in touch. This morning I called them, and the only thing they would tell me is that the ship was right outside of Port Said.
Now, Carol, you actually heard from your father before the State Department called you, is that right?
That's correct. I had a call from him 3 o'clock in the morning, right after the day of the hijacking, and that's when I learned that he was off the ship and in Cairo. My mother was still aboard the ship.
Had they expressed any concern at all? I know that they're not seasoned travelers, but they take a few serious trips a year. Did they express any concern about traveling in that part of the country?
There was some concern, but I don't think they perceived it as a trip to the Middle East, because most of their stops were in Greece and in Italy. There was just a brief stop in Egypt and in Israel. In fact, I encouraged them. I knew there was the option to take the day trip to see the pyramids, and I had encouraged them to do that because I was quite certain they'd never go back to Egypt in their lives.
Your mother stayed on board because she had a little bit of a virus, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When I had learned that most of the people had gotten off to take the trip, I was quite confident they both were off. And then my father's call was probably the most disturbing aspect of the whole thing.
Very distressed.
Yeah,
your mother
very
was still
stressful
on,
to know that she was still on board. And I think he's most pained by the fact that he's not with her.
Phyllis, I'm told that your mother has a pacemaker. Are you concerned about her medical condition at all?
I'm very concerned about it. In fact, her doctor called me a couple of times yesterday, partially to reassure me that as long as she had her medication, she'd be fine. But, along with a pacemaker, she has diabetes, she has high blood pressure. Unless she eats regularly, takes her medication regularly, she can be in problems. And it's just, I know how careful she is with her pills and all, and just the idea of her being there and whether or not they're feeding her and all the rest of that is, I don't know, it just seems like the whole thing is just unreal. I just can't believe it.
Had you been concerned, or had she had any concerns at all about traveling in an area that has been volatile?
I guess we sort of figured it happens to other people. It would never happen to us. Though my sons tried to talk her out of it, they felt that it was a bad place to be and a bad time to be, and there was too much going on. But, her attitude was, well, it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah. Carol, is your father going to stay over there and wait for your mom to get off the ship?
As far as I know, I think we're all looking at and hoping that this is going to be just a matter of hours and not a matter of days. And yes, I'm quite certain he'll stay there until things are resolved.
Well, we sure hope that that's the case. Thank you very much for joining us, Phyllis. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will be back with TV preacher Pat Robertson right after this. It is is now 39 minutes after. The hostages who were held by Palestinian terrorists aboard the ship Achille Lauro are free, but many of their loved ones here in America are still waiting to make some contact with them. Here's some word from them. Burton Weltman is the son of freed hostages Paul and Evelyn Weltman, and he is here with me in New York. And also joining us from WPLG-TV in Miami is Phyllis Yellin. Her mother is Sophie Chasser, who was also held aboard the hijacked ship. We welcome both of you this morning. Miss Yellin, can you hear us in Miami?
Hear anything?
We seem not to be hearing Miss Yellin at the moment. Burton, you've had no contact yet with your parents, have you?
No, I haven't. And initially, I'd like to thank you folks for all the help you've been the last couple of days. At a time when we were desperately wanting information, your staff was willing and able to provide it better and sooner than anybody else, including the State Department. And so I appreciate that. Thank you. No, but I haven't heard from them.
Has the State Department given you any indication as to why you have not heard anything from your parents yet?
No, they haven't told us anything.
What do you think should be done at this point with the hijackers?
Well, at this point, having discovered a murder that was previously undisclosed, I think the calls for prosecution of them are perfectly appropriate, and that's what I would hope.
Miss Yellin, can you hear us down in Miami now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
You, I understand, also have not heard from your parents. Is that the case?
I have not heard anything at all from my mother. I did speak to the State Department this morning, who said that she had asked that the embassy call me to say she's alive and well. I asked them why I haven't gotten a call through, and they said that the government cannot seem to establish any lines. I said I don't understand why, and they said, well, they have no power to do so. Maybe the Egyptian government will help us in getting a line through. And I don't understand why our government, which is supposedly so strong and powerful, can't get a call through to the ship in the almost 20 hours since the time the hijackers have been off. It's been frustrating.
I know it's been frustrating for you. Yesterday was really an emotional roller coaster. You were with us yesterday. How did you react when you heard of Mr. Klinghoffer's death?
I felt like crying. In a way, I felt like it was almost a member of the family. I feel so close to everybody whose relatives are on board there. I lost my father less than a year ago, and I could feel with them. My feeling is what a horrible way for anybody to go. It just reminds me back of Nazi Germany when they just arbitrarily would pick somebody out and say, you're next, boom, you're dead. I just couldn't believe that they really had done it.
Now that, of course, we have the passengers free and they're trying to make arrangements for them to come home, the question is now is what is going to happen to the hijackers? What are your feelings? What do you think should happen to the hijackers?
My feelings are that the hijackers should be taken somewhere and summarily shot, hanged, drawn and quartered, or boiled in oil. I don't care which. I mean, I can't believe that these animals could be allowed to go free. I don't even consider them human beings. I'd hate to be put in the same class with them.
Miss Yellin, thank you for joining us this morning. We're happy to hear that your mother is safe.
Thank you. I would like to say just one thing. Good Morning America has been absolutely wonderful. When I have been trying to get messages or information from the State Department and have gotten nothing but misinformation, non-information. I mean, I even got a call that said, we don't know anything, we have no news to tell you, but we're telling you that we're here and we'll call you if anything comes in, but we don't have anything right now, I mean, which is a ridiculous call. Good Morning America has kept me informed as things come up. They have been beautiful calling me and letting me know everything, and I just want to say thank you, and I'd like to say it on the air so everybody knows just how great you've really been to me.
Thank you. We're glad we could be of any assistance to you during a very tough time. Thank you. And Burton, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you.
And we will be back. Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger joins us right after this.
22 minutes before 8 right now. Sophie Chasser was one of the people who was held hostage on the hijacked cruise ship in the Mediterranean. She returned home this weekend, and this morning she's joining us from WPLG-TV in Miami. Good morning, Mrs. Chasser. Welcome home.
Good morning. It's very, very nice to be home.
Can you describe for us, as an American who has been in another part of the world and held hostage and threatened because you are an American, essentially. How do you describe your feelings about being an American?
It's absolutely wonderful. And when the embassy came on to help us, it was the most wonderful feeling in the world. I'm very, very proud to be an American.
What was the worst moment of all of that period for you?
Well, when we were taken on the deck in front of the bridge of the captain's, the bridge of the ship, we had 2 cans of gasoline on each side, or diesel fuel. We were seated on that hot deck for 3.5 hours with the machine guns at our faces, and they told us that if they don't get their demands, we would be killed. And that was the worst moment. I never thought that I would get off that deck.
Mr. Abbas, who is now, well, we told he's left Yugoslavia, has said publicly in the last 24 hours that Mr. Klinghoffer was not murdered, that he died of a heart attack. What can you tell us?
Yes, that is not true. When we were sitting on the deck, we heard some gunshots, and then we heard a splash in the water. We didn't know what it was, but when we came back, Mrs. Klinghoffer asked for her husband, and they said they didn't know where he was at first. Then after that, when she kept saying she must find her husband, they said that he was in the hospital, that he had a heart attack. And they would not let her go to the hospital. And she kept asking for him and asking for him. But then after they had left the ship, when she went to the hospital, the doctor said he never saw him. And we all thought that when we heard the shots and the splash in the water, that's when he disappeared.
Will you go back to the Middle East again?
No, definitely not.
How did people react, all of you, when you were threatened on the deck and wherever and whenever you were threatened? How did everybody respond?
What do you mean?
Well, when all of you were threatened by the hijackers, what were people's reactions?
We were all, well, after we discussed the fact that we were all very calm, no one cried, no one pleaded for their life. We were just sitting there in fear. One judge started to talk to the PLO. After all, we're not all young people. We're not political. Why do you want us? But they never answered him, and then he never said another word. But we were all very quiet and very calm, and we all had our own thoughts.